We're still in this crazy market of this low inventory, high buyer demand, low interest rates, and just all the things. So even though we've maybe some of you haven't even felt this, but I know Carol and I have slowed, that is a very relative term compared to, where we were a few years ago and where we were just a few months ago. So let's start the conversation about the buying side of things. So Marcia, I was going to start with you. I know you recently closed on your purchase and sale. How many houses did you look at, and how many offers did you make before you got this one, or was this just the lucky one?
Well, basically, I concentrated in one area. There's a new zero lot off of South Shea. So we knew we wanted new construction. We didn't want to start over having to do a roof, water heater, and things like that. So we wanted new construction. And I did go through many homes that were under construction in this development. And there happened to be one that had been on the market for probably about 3 or 4 months. It had been previously owned for a very short time by someone else. And unfortunately, I heard that they ended up getting a divorce. So the house was empty for a while. And my husband really liked the floor plan. I wanted something a little bit smaller, but we really liked the house. It was a corner lot. So we ended up putting an offer on this one. And I believe there were 2 offers made. One, I guess, went in like right before we put our offer in.
Gotcha. Okay. So multiple offers, but you were kind of stalking the area, not just going and looking at anything else that came on the market. We were really focused in on knowing what we wanted and what we needed.
Yes, I kind of had an idea where I wanted to focus on, and honestly, we were just kind of thinking about it at that time because we were going back and forth if we wanted to downsize at this time, but we kind of decided with the market being this crazy, we would go ahead and jump in and see what happened.
And did you feel like there were a lot of options for what you were looking for, or maybe compared to where you've been in different markets, like a lot to choose from, or really slim pickings?
Well, no, I think I had a lot to choose from, but I think it basically compromised. My husband wanted a different floor plan. So that's how we ended up with this one.
We all understand about compromise when it comes to buying and selling. All right, Monica. So obviously the inventory shortage has affected, how many homes are out there, and then how many homes our buyers have from which to choose. We don't really have those marathon showing days like we might have in the past, unless you've got out of towners coming in, and that can sometimes be a different story. But we don't have those. We may look at 6 or 7, and that's like, whoa, man, we looked at a lot of houses today instead of the 15 plus that it used to be. So on average, how many houses are your buyers getting in their search results or wanting to look at? Like, how many do they have to choose from?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the beginning of that process, maybe we have 1, maybe 2 a day. And by the time it's finished, I would say a good average is anywhere between 12, 15, up to 20.
I can agree with that. And then whether we show the buyer one house and it's the perfect one, or we show them a few duds before they decide they're going to make an offer, how many offers do you think you're writing up for a customer before they get the house?
I'm thinking an average of 8.
I feel like that's probably fair. And are there any specific offer terms that you can think of specifically that have really, and I know every situation is different, but any specific offer terms that you think have really helped or hurt your buyers when submitting offers?
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that helps is when the buyers will ask, they'll make clear on their offer to the seller, they're only going to ask for lender required repairs, and even specify no cosmetic repairs will be asked will be requested by the home as a result of the home inspection. I think that means a lot to the sellers, and to release as many contingencies as possible. Mm-hmm. And have a good, strong pre-approval letter.
Oh, definitely. We're going to get to that one too, for sure. I agree, though. I think in our experience, we have, the fewer contingencies you can put in there, the better. We have verbiage that we copy and paste in pretty much any offer for all of our attendees. If that's not something that you have, whether it be notes on your computer or Word document, whatever, makes your life easier. If you will take the verbiage that you see yourself putting in so many offers over and over again and just copy and paste it, saves you some time. We're gonna, not ask for any repairs from the home inspection, and it'll be an as-is purchase with the exception of lender required repairs. We're going to, the escalation clauses. That's some easy verbiage that you can copy and paste. And then appraisal gap, and we'll get into that conversation too about, paying over appraised value if it comes in low. Just a kind of best practice trick of the trade would be copy and paste that information, makes your life easier down the road. And when you have to have these conversations with buyers, if these are the things that we would suggest you include in your offer, it's easy to just send it on, explain to them what it is, instead of, them seeing it and going, wait, explain, what is this? Kind of doing some extra legwork on the front end. And then we've also noticed the difference in buyer financing. Obviously, I feel like VA and FHA are they're struggling right now with as far as getting their offers accepted, because it's not as easy to waive repairs, because lender required repairs just typically seem to be a little bit more stringent when it comes to FHA and VA than it is conventional. I think that's just an understood thing. So unfortunately, FHA and VA buyers, I think, are struggling a little bit in this market, more so than conventional, but not impossible to get them under contract. We've definitely had a few, and it's just a matter of educating. And we've kind of got a topic on that a little later as well. We did have a attendee email actually before the webinar started asking if we would discuss appraisal waivers and what that means. So please explain buyers waiving the appraisal. It's happening a lot, and not everyone understands what that means. So for example, if the list price is $350,000 and a buyer offers $370,000 and waives the appraisal, checks that box where it's not contingent on the appraisal. What does that mean? And for Carol and I, it means two things. And when you're representing the buyer, you have to have these questions. And when you're representing the seller, you have to have these questions. It could mean one of two things. And either that is a lender waived appraisal, or it is a buyer waived appraisal. And the lender waived appraisal means, hey, you're so strong, the property's so great, the AVM all lines up, we've sent it through desktop underwriting, we don't actually need an appraisal. An appraisal is not even gonna happen. It doesn't matter. We're good. We've waived the appraisal, not even a thing. The buyer waived appraisal is different. And that just means, all right, we're gonna still do one because the lender is gonna require it. But if it comes in low, I'm just gonna pay the difference. Well, that's great, fine and dandy. But as some of you know, if it comes in really low and we have a problem, do they have the funds to make up that difference? And do they understand that they are contractually obligated to make up that difference? Monica, do you have you had experience with that, of waiving appraisals, and have you had it go wrong, or maybe had somebody not understand on either side what that actually entailed?
Well, I have. And I had a situation where the buyer could not, he was going to, back in the beginning of this, the market as we know it today, he thought he could get the money from his profit sharing, his retirement, and it wound up, he could not get that money. And we were talking about $10,000, $12,000. Since then, when I submit an offer with them not including an appraisal contingency, I also include proof with the offer, proof that the buyer does have the funds. And that way the listing agent knows that won't be an issue later, because I make clear to the buyer, if it's $10,000, $3,000 short, they're going to have to make up that difference.
Agree. And I think that's a good best practice when you're representing the seller, which I know we're talking about the buyer side technically, but this one really does apply to both sides. When you're representing the seller and you get that appraisal waiver box, you need to ask, what does that mean to you? Are you telling me the lender's just not going to order one, or are you telling me the buyer's going to pay the difference? And if the buyer's going to pay the difference, I need proof of funds that shows that we've got the down payment, we've got our closing costs, and we've at least got the difference between the list price and the contract price, assuming that I, as the listing agent, priced it correctly, and we've at least got comps to support that part. And again, if it comes in lower than that, different conversation. It just is what it is. But I think that's something that some of these attendees should probably make note of, is that doesn't always just mean we're going to write a check, and it doesn't always mean that we're just not going to do one. It can go either way. Another question that we had from the audience was, what can buyers do to make their FHA, or what can agents do to make their FHA clients' offers more desirable? And that's kind of a tricky one. Monica, do you have anything that you can throw in there that you've had success with on FHA buyers?
Well, simply having I think the main thing that they can do is make clear that they're only going to ask for lender required repairs, or only for systems related repairs. And because some sellers still think FHA is going to require a lot of repairs. So I think that that's the main thing that can be done from my experience.
I agree. And if you've got a buyer that understands that if something comes up, you know, we may need to put in some sweat equity and fix it on the front end in order for you to get this contract accepted. If they want it bad enough, then that's a conversation that y'all can have and everybody can understand. I've also, we've kind of seen, and I'm not trying to pinpoint a specific area, but we have kind of seen that FHA buyers have a better chance of getting their offer accepted in the Bartlett area. And we had a buyer that had to go FHA and was trying to figure out why can we not win these offers? Where can we go? Changing to conventional was not an option. And we looked at the numbers and looked at how things are closing, you know, conventional versus cash versus FHA, VA, that whole thing. And FHA seems to have pretty good luck in the Bartlett area. And I don't know if it's because it's less competitive at the moment, or if I don't really know what the rhyme or reason is, but I'm just going to tell everybody that secret. Bartlett's about to blow up now that we're having this conversation. But if you have an FHA buyer, you might have that conversation with them about, have you thought about living in Bartlett? Because it's a kind of a forgotten area for some people. And if you're thinking about Lakeland and Arlington and that kind of thing, you forget that, well, Bartlett's just right over there. But if you've got an FHA buyer, it's worth having the conversation of, you know, what do you think about living in Bartlett? There's a lot of pluses to that. And then Monica, how do we keep the buyers in this market motivated after they lose that fourth, fifth, sixth house? How do you keep them engaged, and kind of what expectations are you setting for them on the front end about how hard but rewarding this market can be?
On the front end, I asked them when their lease is up, what their month-to-month options are. If they can't stay wherever they're living now, what are the options for maybe going into an extended stay? I try to cover as much as I can on the front end. And then I explain to them that there are going to be days when there are no properties available to look at. Then all of a sudden there will be 2 or 3 hopefully for us to look at. And that patience is important, not to get disappointed, not to run out of steam on it, that we will find their home. The issue is when, and just prepare them up front for it.
That is right. So much preparation is helpful. All right, Marcia, let's kind of switch gears a little bit to the seller side. There's more to talk about on the buyer side too, but we'll kind of switch gears a little bit. So how was the selling process for you? I know you had a fantastic realtor, one of our own, Maureen Frazier, and you were in great hands. Did you have a lot of traffic? Did you have multiple offers? Kind of how did y'all handle selling your property?
Yes, it was actually unbelievable. We had 18 showings in let me say like a day and a half. It started out at 8 o'clock Friday morning. We finally got back into our home about 9 o'clock that evening. We did have 2 offers come through. And like I said, it was just a whirlwind. It was unbelievable.
That's awesome. And you got everything you could have hoped for, right?
Yes.
Did they
go ahead?
Did they throw anything in there as far as, you know, paying anything on your behalf? I'm assuming they didn't ask for much of anything from you. Closing and possession flexible. I mean, did they just pretty much say, what do you need from me for me to get this house?
Well, luckily, there were no issues for the buyer on our house as far as the loan. They were pre-approved. That was very smooth sailing right there. I think because we listed our house in February, things where even though the market wasn't as hot as it has been the last 2 or 3 months, but it was still a very active market. But I think at that time, they were, as far as a little nitpicky on repairs that they wanted. It was just very small things that you're probably not seeing today. But other than that, it went very smoothly with, they were very generous and let us stay in the house for a couple of weeks after closing.
That's great. Yeah, we see a lot of the delayed possession, which is nice. We did have a question about, in the Q&A, about how do you present proof of funds for the difference between appraisal value and purchase price? Would a letter from the bank suffice? And Monica, do you have an opinion on how one would submit proof of funds?
Yes, I usually, if possible, get a letter on the bank letterhead, just letting them know that the buyer, I think we have a pretty good idea of what the difference may be. And if we think there could be a difference up to 15, 20,000, just to let the seller know on bank letterhead that the buyer does have funds available to use up to this amount. And when I have used those and been fortunate enough to get the property, I think that was very important in that.
Mm-hmm. Sufficient, just something that shows that they've got skin in the game. They're not just saying, oh yeah, it'll be fine, we'll figure it out, and if we can't figure it out, we'll just not buy it. So yeah, something on letterhead, or a bank statement with redacted information, or we had somebody buy a house with Bitcoin. So whatever you got to show me that shows you got the money. All right, Monica, on average, how many offers per house? And I know this kind of varies too from area to area. Well, it seems like everything is just on fire right now, but how many offers per house are your sellers getting? And of those, are all of them over list price?
Pretty much all. I haven't gotten any under in a long time. Pretty much all of them are at list or over. I would say in most areas, you're going to get 20. I think that's 15 to 20 offers, and depending on how long you're waiting. If you're waiting 4 or 5 days, you're going to wind up with many more, I think.
Yes, absolutely. We just had another question come in. Have you seen buyers pay more than the appraisal?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. We just had one, I believe we were in Germantown. The appraisal came in low. We already had a clause in there. It was our listing. We already had the clause in there. The buyer was going to pay X amount of dollars over the appraised value if it were to come in low. It came in lower than anybody expected it to come in, because sometimes that just happens. And the seller was not happy with that final number, and the buyer still wanted the house enough that we still, it didn't go back up to the highest contract price or anything. There was some negotiation, but it does just go to show that even when things kind of take you by, blindside you a little bit and don't go the way anybody expected them to go, things are still negotiable. And so we did have somebody very recently end up paying more than the appraised value because of that. All right, now let's get into some of these fun extras that the buyers are throwing in there. So what incentives have you seen that maybe we didn't see 18 months ago that buyers are throwing into their offers for your sellers?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Okay. The extended possession after closing, 2-3 weeks, a month, buyers are offering, or including as long as the seller needs, up to 1 month, and at no charge. So that's very appealing to the seller, especially that has some fear about moving or about selling. And like I said, the repairs and releasing those contingencies. I think that possession date is what I'm seeing the most of that sellers really like.
I think it has the biggest effect, and especially the rent-free part. Knowing that they get their money, they get to stay in the house for a minute and figure out what their next move is, because in this market, a lot of times they genuinely don't know what the next move is. For us, I would say we have had a couple of offers come in where the buyer offers to pay commissions, all or some. That's always been an interesting one because the first time you see it, it happens more often in other markets. But when the first time we saw it, I was like, can you even do that? How does that work? But you in fact can. You just have to be careful and make sure your verbiage is pretty clear and understandable. Consult an attorney, of course. I've also had somebody offer to, she was a hairdresser, and she offered to cut and color this woman's hair for a year for free if she would just take her offer, because we've thrown all the money at it that we possibly could. So whatever incentives you've got, obviously consult your attorney before you just start throwing things, at your sellers, like tickets to Grizzlies games and that kind of thing. But you can get creative. There are other ways to entice the seller to accept your offer that does not, if you can't just keep throwing money at it.
Yes, Amanda, and also offering to pay the sellers, the title search and the seller's closing cost.
Yes, and we include that as well. And typically, I don't know if this is a common number for everybody, but we usually cap it at $1,500 because that's usually a fairly round number when it comes to closing costs and attorney's fees on a seller side. And it's not even that it'll make or break it. It's almost just the goodwill gesture of let me just take care of that expense for you. Sometimes it may not even make the biggest difference when it comes to what their net is, but that gesture can go a long way. Marcia, was there anything on any of your offers that you received that set them apart or was more appealing to you? And I think we kind of addressed that with the possession was great for you because you got to stay in the house for a little while and leisurely move out and make sure that things lined up the way they were supposed to with your purchase, correct?
Yes, and also the first offer that we had, they offered $5,000 over appraised value, and that was appealing to us as well. And the second offer that came in, when you were talking about different loans, the second offer that came in, it was a VA loan. And like I said, the first offer was just a very clean deal. And they did offer that clause, $5,000 over appraised value, which our house did appraise. The house was on the market for $550. It appraised for $555, so sold for $560. So that was very appealing to us.
That's awesome. Yes. When it comes to financing, Monica, how closely do you look at financing and commitment letters and the prospects of getting to the closing table, depending on where that letter comes from? Is a local lender more important than others, even in this market?
I have that conversation also with the seller when I list. And many times a local lender is much more important to the seller. The seller will want to know, is this loan dependent upon down payment assistance or receipt of down payment assistance or gift funds? And if by some chance that down payment assistance was not available, is there a plan B to make sure this goes to closing? So those are that's things that I think about when I'm reviewing the pre-approval letter and going over it with the seller and answering their questions.
Absolutely. So any of our attendees, if you're newer to the business, which there's a lot of new agents in the industry right now, if you're newer to the business or haven't done a whole lot of transactions, get yourself a good reputable lender, somebody that you can call on that will help explain the process to you and make sure that your customers are taken care of, because having that local approval letter can really make the difference sometimes. Let's see, I have a new Q&A. I've got a few things in the chat that I'm seeing that I'll go through real quick. Katie, I don't know if you've seen anything that we need to touch on real quick.
There was one thing about back to the waiving appraisal conversation. The question was, must you chat with lender concerning waiving appraisal from the lender's side, and should this be in writing from the lender?
So the instances that I've personally had, when I ask the question, is this a personal, are you, Mr. Buyer, waiving the appraisal, or is the lender waiving the appraisal? We have had the agent confirm that. And if you're good with that relationship and they say, yep, the lender's waiving it, we're not even going to do one. If you're comfortable with that, then great. I have had lenders write it in the approval letter. This is not contingent on an appraisal, because depending on who your lender is, you can have it run through before the offers are made, desktop underwriting, depending on how much information your buyer has provided to the lender. There are ways to confirm whether or not an appraisal is going to be necessary or not before you write that offer. And that's how some of these offers are getting won by saying we're waiving the appraisal, is because they've done that extra legwork on the front end to make sure that the information they're putting in this offer is good and true, and we've verified it and checked it. This buyer is good to go. We're not going to need an appraisal. But yes, I have had people write it in directly into the letter for extra clarity. Monica, do you pick up the phone and have a conversation with the lenders on a lot of these deals?
I do talk to them, and I also ask the buyer's agent to get an updated pre-approval letter stating that they are waiving that appraisal requirement.
And then let's see, was there anything else in here? How do you handle any new repairs or problems, if any, after closing when sellers stay for 2 to 3 weeks after closing? That one's a fun one. You have an occupancy agreement. There's a form for that. There's a form for everything. And the form goes over whose responsibility. You know, you're responsible for insurance still, contents at least. You're responsible for utilities, and you're responsible for any damage. So you still do your final walkthrough before closing, even if all the stuff's still on the wall, not a single box is packed, you know, all of that. And then you're entitled to do that again prior to possession. But that's kind of the only way that you can. There's the people that are living in the property, it's just like a lease agreement. They're still responsible for any damage, but yes, you should probably lay eyes on it before closing so that you know what the difference is in the damage. Monica, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with that. Just go do your walkthrough before closing, just as normal. And then I always go back with the buyers when, because you know, you're going to have a key turned over at closing also. So when that possession time, I'm there with the buyers and go through it with them. If there's anything wrong, then we start communicating with the other agent.
Marcia, did y'all, I know y'all did delayed possession. Did you, I'm going to guess y'all probably did an occupancy agreement. Did your buyers do a walkthrough prior to closing and then again prior to taking possession, or do you recall?
Well, I know the realtor did, and our buyers were actually in California. So they basically, I think they viewed our home online and basically were relying on the expertise of their realtor. So she's the one who basically always viewed the property. So the buyers did not go through, but the realtor did go again before closing and do a final walkthrough.
Oh, here's a good one, Monica. Because Marcia, I think back in February too, this was probably still doable, having a contingency on the property that you're purchasing being contingent on the property that you're selling. So right. Someone has asked us also, what is your technique if you have a buyer who has to buy contingent upon selling their home? And Monica, I think we're probably in the same boat with like, that's hard to accomplish these days. So what do you do, if anything, with that?
Well, the couple of times I've experienced that lately, back in the beginning of this, is they wanted to go ahead and put, you know, these buyers that have wanted to go ahead and put that contingency. And after they have been denied, maybe a couple of times, gotten an offer rejected, a really good offer, solely because of that contingency, they've pretty well learned to just go ahead and sell their home and make proper preparation.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Extended stays, families, checking up with the in-laws, whatever you got to do. If you have equity in your house, and if you're a seller, if you have a seller that has some equity and there's a possibility for a bridge loan there, those are, I've seen more and more of those recently, home equity lines of credit, bridge loans. There are options for buyers that want to find that place before they sell this place, but really want to use the money from one to the other. And you look at the comps and you think you can sell it for whatever that final number is going to be. Home equity lines of credit and bridge loans are options. So you need to talk to your preferred local lender and your seller, also buyer, about those options, because if you can't do a bridge loan or a home equity line of credit or have deep pockets and really need that contingency, you kind of just have to figure out what you're going to do for a couple months and hope that it's all going to work out, which it always does work out. And that's something that all of us tell our customers, our buyers and our sellers, it all works out the way it's supposed to. I haven't had a customer come to me and say, man, I really wish we had bought that third house that we lost. I'll never forget that one. I don't like this one. It always works out the way it's supposed to. And it gets incredibly defeating sometimes. But as their realtor, you're their biggest cheerleader and supporter, and you're helping them make this big financial decision. And as defeating as it can be for everyone sometimes, it always works out, and trying to stay optimistic and positive for them is your other job, of being a therapist and a best friend sometimes. Monica, how do you prepare your sellers and set expectations for the process? So do you have like a listing and showing strategy? I think we're seeing a lot of things where it lists on a Thursday or Friday and shows through the weekend, and then we review offers on Monday. What's kind of your all right, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're going to list it now, review offers then, and here's all the things that are going to happen in between.
What I really like to do is suggest listing it on Thursday, Friday, with showings to begin the next day, and suggest they take a trip out of town for the weekend and just let everybody come through and look. And as offers are received, I'm emailing them to them, so that when they get back in town, they're ready, I'm ready, we're ready to meet and get a timely response time to those people who are waiting.
That leads to what my next question was going to be, which was, do you hold all the offers and let's present them all on Monday at 8 o'clock, when you get in town, and we'll make a decision, or do you send them as they come in? And I think that at the beginning of the market getting so crazy, it was okay to sit on them, hold them, look at them all at the same time and figure out which ones we like the best, when it was 4 or 5 and maybe 15 or 20 showings. When you're into 3 days of nonstop showings, 30 plus offers, 1, it gets overwhelming. But 2, it's almost the common courtesy when we're submitting them to the sellers as they come in to say, all right, we've got 2 or 3 clear winners here. We've got these other people that they've got a couple other houses that they could probably go look at and maybe make an offer on, but they're waiting on us to decide if they're going to be the winner or not. We already know they're not going to be the winner. So if we can cut them loose and say, we're going to reject this one, sorry, and still hold on to our top. And that way the customer only has so many things that they have to look through in the end to pick their favorite. And you've kind of weeded things out. You've given this other buyer the opportunity to go and make an offer on something else. You've also given the opportunity to say, hey, we weren't kidding. It's not, you got to go higher. And if they really love that house, they have the opportunity to come back and make a stronger offer if they've just got to have it. But I think I think we've kind of seen that shift over the last probably 9 months or so. Do you agree?
I agree. Yes.
It just gets a little overwhelming.
It does.
And then do you have a spreadsheet or a Excel spreadsheet, whatever, breaking down all of the offer terms for your customer?
I do. I'm all about try to be as simple, just incorporate simplicity through the process. And as I'm sending them these offers, I'm updating the spreadsheet so they know their numbers and they're able to counter, reject, accept, whatever they want to do as they come in, and they've got their spreadsheet. It's all simple for them to see.
Yes. And for any new agents or attendees out there that are like, what are y'all talking about? You can really make a simple Excel spreadsheet, or if you've got somebody in your office that's already using something like this, they will share it with you. Like, it's not copyrighted information. It's pretty basic. And if you want to message me or Monica, I would be happy to email you my spreadsheet. It really is just some basic boxes, and it helps me keep things organized, and then it helps the customer keep things organized when they're looking at it, and we all know what it is that we're agreeing to. So you've got a lot of agents that would be happy to share their tips and tricks with you. That's the whole purpose of all of this.
Yes.
Amanda, sorry to jump in. It's Katie.
No,
Hi. I'm still here lurking in the background. I don't know if we told them this or not, but there is a handout that we're going to provide to all the attendees with these tips and tricks. But what would y'all think about providing that spreadsheet with that too?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. I can just send mine into a PDF so you can kind of see what the bars are. And then you can tweak however you want. You know, mine's, I've added and taken out over the years of what really does and doesn't need to be in there. Marcia, I had one for you. As a seller, is there anything in your transaction that you think would be something that an agent could benefit from hearing, or anything that you wished had gone differently, or anything you didn't know about that ended up showing up?
Yes, we had an incident like 2.5 days before closing. We received a call from Maureen, and we were totally blindsided. It's the first time I've ever heard the term forbearance. The gentleman that we were purchasing the home from had taken out a forbearance loan, and he did not have the funds. I assume I heard that he didn't think he had to pay that off in order to sell his home. But of course he did. The lender was not going to close without receiving all of their money. So, I mean, we were in panic mode because, you know, boxes were packed. We had no place to go. And, you know, basically we were asked if we would be interested in paying off his loan, the amount that he owed. And we said, well, no, not really. And so, but luckily, you know, we thought about it that night, and the buyer, or the seller was considering going into a short sale. And obviously we didn't want to go through anything like that. So we ended up calling Maureen back in the morning and said, let's work out a deal. And we put in a certain amount, and God bless the realtors, because they each took a cut in their commission, and which we commended them for, so we could get to closing and everything from there. But basically, no matter how smooth you think things are going, have plan B in place. So, because we had no idea where we were going to go if we couldn't move into this house.
Yeah, and I think that's great for everybody on here to hear, because yes, removing these contingencies, making these offers as clean as possible, you almost think that it's a done deal, and that nothing is done until it closes. So anything can happen. Always remember that, and always prepare your customers to decide for that.
And also, forbearance is something that is new with COVID. So that's another thing that everybody needs to be aware of, that those loans are out there.
Yes, yes. Let's see. Katie, did you see anything else? And I know there's a lot of things in the chat, so I tried to scroll back and make sure I didn't miss anything, but I'm sure I did, and I apologize to all of the attendees. If you see anything, hop in, but I've got a couple other points, of course.
There's Monica, some stuff in Q&A. Did you see that, Amanda?
Let me see. What do we got? With multiple offers of many accepted and presented to clients, isn't it respectable to contact the agents that offered and didn't make it with the seller's signature? And isn't this tying you up with paperwork? So I can say that I do believe that, yes, you are supposed to, and I believe this is what the question is, you are supposed to mark the rejected box and send it back. I don't know that that's what happens all the time because of the amount of paperwork and offers and influx of things. I would also argue that a formal written, a written email that says, thank you so much for your offer, but the sellers are rejecting it at this time, is also, could probably stand up as a formal rejection. That would just be my practice. I would say contact your broker if you have any questions about that specifically, or anyone at TR, apologies, or Trek with that. But I know that I see it both ways, and I don't really have an issue one way or the other. Monica, do you have a strong opinion one way or the other?
No, I just try to send, when I notify the agent that another offer was accepted, I try and send that page 10 back, that it's been signed, so we can all move on to the next thing.
To the next thing, right. Another question we had is, how do you handle a contract that says buyer is buying as is and inspection is for buyer's info only, and then buyer wants to walk after inspections? I would say that really greatly depends on that verbiage. And that's where realtors sometimes get into trouble. We are not attorneys. We sometimes try to act like attorneys with the verbiage that we create and use lots of nice big words that we think are going to, you know, tie it all together, but there's always room for interpretation and things can always be construed differently. So I would say that if you are representing the buyer, that you would want to confirm with your attorney that you're either covered or not covered with what you're saying to be able to get out of the contract if that is your goal. If you are on the selling side, I would also probably consult the attorney and say, if this person does this inspection and they decide to walk, is this what this means? Because I've seen instances like that where we've made that mistake of reading something and going, oh, well, this is what this means. And then you get another person's opinion and it can go either way. Katie, I see your video is back on. Do you need to tell me something?
There's still a few in the Q&A. It looks like a lot of people are starting to put them there instead of chat, which is kind of helpful. So
yeah, I appreciate it because it gets kind of, all right. Will you speak on escalation clauses and protocol for providing information from the offers that put them in effect? Monica, how do you handle escalation clauses and I guess proof thereof?
I have, most sellers, I'm finding they really don't want to deal with the escalation clause right now. Some of them, if they're not very privy with, if they're not have had experience to know about that, they start thinking they just want to know how much they're going to get from the front end. So my experience lately has been the seller does not want an escalate, they just want to know how much they're going to pay them. And if they do include the escalation clause, I think it's important they say we're going to pay $5,000 above the appraised value, or $5,000. I've gotten one the other day that said, if the appraisal comes in low, buyer will pay $2,000 above the appraised value. So I just made sure that buyer had that $2,000 and was prepared to do that and explain to the seller it could come in low, but at least he would have $2,000 over whatever it would appraised for.
So what we have for escalation, or what we use and what we see, depending on the customer, is we put that in the event of a multiple offer situation, buyer agrees to pay X over your next highest offer up to X. In the event this escalation clause is used, seller to provide proof of other offer. Purchasers' names may be redacted, because that's an issue that we've run into of somebody saying, well, I don't want to prove to you that this offer existed. I don't want to lay all this person's information out on the table. And we just need that first page. You can mark off the buyer's name. I just need to see that either that offer or that ninth page with the special stipulations and their escalation clause pushed me to where my offer is now. And then we're also in the market now where we tell people, listen, the escalation clause, it is what it is at this point. We just need to go in with what your highest is. You'll never know the difference. If you could have bought it for $2,000 less, you're not going to know, but we've got to put our strongest foot forward right now because this market is crazier than it was a few months ago. So I haven't seen as many escalation clauses as I used to. I've just seen people go straight in with, this is my highest and best, give it to me. And then we've still got buyers, especially if they've, only lost one offer, with the escalation clause, but we have the extra caveat verbiage that we want you to prove it to us, but we're obviously fully aware that you need to protect those customers' privacy rights. And we have had that conversation with one of our local real estate attorneys, and that seems to be acceptable. I don't know that everybody's comfortable with it, but I do believe that the questions we've asked, it's come back as being acceptable. I had a home. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, a question about how do you offer extras without getting into trouble with fair housing?
Ooh, that kind of feeds into, well, and it's not an extra, but we were going to talk about love letters as well, and kind of how that can be affected by fair housing. But when it comes to the extras, I don't know that there's a violation of fair housing when you offer a good or service, because it doesn't have any type of violation on any of the protected classes. anything that I've seen anyway. So I would say if you have a question about something that your customer is willing to offer, or a question about something that someone is offered to you in your offer, in your seller's offer, I would just say consult with an attorney and say, is either side going to get in trouble for something like this? And I would think there's so many different things, that creative ways that people can throw in, incentives to have their offer accepted. I would just say you would want to check with your attorney. But if it's not a clear violation of one of the protected classes in some way, shape, or form, I don't know that you're really going to be in too much of a potential problem. But with the bringing up of the protected classes and fair and affordable housing or fair housing violations would be the love letters. So they're out there. We all use them. We've all seen them. Ohio, I think, is the state particularly just outlawed them. They're not allowed anymore. I personally feel like that's where a lot of the country is going to be headed over the next few months or years, that the love letters won't really be a thing that is allowed. Marcia, did you write a love letter on your offer, or did you receive any love letters on your sale?
Yes, we did receive on the sale of our house. And it does tug at your heart, when you read these things, but for us, it was basically a business. That's how we look at, we're doing a transaction like this. So the love letter didn't come into play, unfortunately. Right. But like I said, it does tug at your heart.
And Monica, what's your experience? I found it feels like it kind of depends on the seller and what their motivation is, or what their attachment is to the property itself.
I think the sellers, I've had many sellers tell me they're interested in how much they're going to walk away from that table with. They don't care. They really don't care who buys their home when it gets right down to it. And I think sometimes it's a mistake to submit those letters. And sometimes sellers will tell you they don't want to see them because they don't want to be swayed. They don't even want to see them.
Right. And I've seen realtor remarks state, don't bring them to us. We don't want to see them. We're not going to present them. And they're not obligated to present them. We're obligated by the Code of Ethics to present any and all offers, but we are not necessarily obligated to submit these extra documentations, unless the buyer, obviously, if it comes to us, we need to tell the seller it exists, but we don't have to actually submit it. Yes, Katie.
There was a question about someone just wanted a definition of love letter, what you guys mean by that.
So the love letter is, this letter that the buyer comes in and sees the house and says, oh my gosh, I have to have it. And I need this person to understand my story. And so I'm going to tug at your heartstrings. I'm going to make you cry. I'm going to tell you my whole life story and how I can see myself and my children, or whoever it may be, sitting on the back porch drinking coffee on Saturday morning and coming home here and having brunch with all of my family after church, and whatever those things are. And we've had customers go through the house and go, ooh, you're a such and such fan, or, oh, you went to such and such school. I'm going to plug that in my letter. Social media is a powerful tool, and you can find all kinds of things out about people. And we have people that do that. And you've got some sellers that appeal to that and they think, oh my gosh, this is meant to be. This person has spoken to me and this is supposed to be their house. And then you have other sellers that just, how big is my bag of money going to be? That's all that matters to me in the end. I think that for us, it varies. And if you're a buyer's agent, it can give you the edge. It can. We've had people win houses not being the highest offer because of their letter. On the seller side, it could put you in a very uncomfortable situation and possibly be a fair housing violation.
And can you talk about how that could potentially be a fair housing violation? And also, Marcia had a really good, if you're up for sharing, Marcia, the story about that letter you got, that could have also been a fair housing violation if it was turned down because of status.
Right. Well, basically in their letter, it was a picture of the husband and wife and their child. And they were writing that their child had special needs. And, like I said, that really makes you feel very bad. But we had a a steep staircase, and it has and we weren't exactly sure what type of special needs the child had, but we thought, well, if it's mobility or something like that, why would they be putting that in the letter? With them, the child of the master bedroom down, and all the children bedrooms would be upstairs. So yeah, that was something that I like I said, we didn't appreciate having that part put into it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what can happen is, so say you end up with 5 or 6 offers. Okay. And then it closes out, and say that buyer or that agent goes back and looks at the terms and says, well, that was you closed out at exactly what my offer terms were. Why did that person get the house over my person? Mm-hmm. And if you have somebody that does some digging, and it's happened across the country, it will continue to happen. It's why they're being outlawed. That you have to then justify, well, why do we go with this offer over this offer? Well, this offer wrote a letter. Well, this one didn't. Well, you get into a situation of what was your reasoning? And when that comes into question, your ethics comes into question, and a violation of the possible fair housing comes into question. And that's not anything that anybody wants to come face to face with. But we personally had a customer, I think we lost like 13 houses. It was rough. But those first couple of offers, she was including a picture of her and her dog, because pictures are included in love letters. And her dog is a pit, and she loves her dog. He's a rescue, doesn't think anything of it. Well, after a couple letters, her friends were like, you don't need to be included in that picture. Not everybody likes pits. And she's like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about it. Carol and I hadn't thought about it. Not from a dog standpoint. I've thought about all the other familiar classes that you can be discriminated against, but I hadn't thought about discriminating against you because of your dog. And it just goes to show that buyers are out there thinking about this. They're wondering why they're not getting the houses. And when they run out of options of the logical ones of, oh, it wasn't high enough, or I didn't have enough contingencies removed, or whatever the thing may be, your brain automatically goes to, why'd they get it over me? And it just opens up too many possibilities of issues. Again, on the buying agent side, it can be the thing that pushes you, to the front of the pack. On the seller agent thing, it can really put you in an uncomfortable situation, but you've got to treat everything the same. So if you present one, you got to present them all. And if you make the rule that we're not going to present any, we really can't present any. You just have to be very, very careful when it comes to that. And when we're seeing them be banned in other states, there's a reason for that. And we need to kind of keep that at our in front of our faces. Mm-hmm. Katie, do you see anything else? I've got a couple more questions in here, but I didn't know how much time we actually had.
I think you're fine. I think people will bounce off if they need to, but I think we're good. So it's there's a question about, I had a home listed and it could not be shown until the tenant leaves. Removed from market because tenant extended time to leave. What do you suggest in terms of listing and marketing this home being sold as it is? Do I need lots of pics, other items that I need to consider? So I guess it's about being on the market as is.
As is and with a tenant. Tenant sales are tricky in general, whether we're in this market or not, because you have to abide by tenant rights, and you have to give them proper notice, and they have to know what's going on, and they have to approve you coming into their home, or at least be written into the lease that they don't have to be present, but they have to be given ample notice. So we have a lot of investor sales that say, tenant occupied, do not disturb tenants, cannot be shown, contingent on, all offers need to be made contingent on physical inspection. So not necessarily contingent on the inspection, which you can get to that part later, but contingent on physical inspection. And basically that means you're going to have to put in the remarks that buyers can make offers, but they're going to be blind offers. And once we accept the terms, then I will disturb the tenants and let them know that we're going to have somebody coming in. But yes, if the tenants will let you in so that you can take pictures, it's been our experience that the more pictures you can offer, the better. If you can do a virtual tour, the better. And that way the buyers have some general idea of what it is they're buying when they're making these blind offers. Monica, have you had instances of selling or having buyers buy tenant occupied properties?
Not really owner occupant buyers. They really need that house vacant when they close, and the tenant already gone, because they are usually, if they're getting a loan, they're usually signing that they're going to occupy that property within so many days, right? And so they really are not in a situation where if that tenant decided they did not want to leave, that they know what to do legally. So usually I find they don't want to do that, but on the occasion that it is possible right now with the way our market is, they're happy to put it contingent upon going in after at least.
Yeah, and for that agent that's about to list that property, I would also say find out what the lease terms are and make sure you include that information in the realtor remarks to find out when the lease is up, what the rent is. Because if it is a situation where their lease is going to be up in 30 or 60 days, then you can kind of offer yourself for owner occupants. If it's going to be 6 months, you're pretty much limiting to investor buyers, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Monica, here's kind of a broad question. Has this market changed your business model? Have the last 8, I mean, obviously COVID's changed a lot of our business models, but has the market being as crazy and hot as it is changed your business model over the last 6 or 9 months? And is there anything that's going to stick moving forward that maybe you didn't do 2 years ago that now is just 100% going to be part of your business model every day?
Mm-hmm. It has certainly improved. I've always been big on communication, but this has certainly made me realize the need for really, whether people prefer texting. You know, before this happened, so many of our clients or customers, they just wanted to be text. You just text them what's going on, where we're going to meet. And there wasn't sometimes so much verbal communication. Now it is so important, I think, to keep in touch with these buyers and sellers, because sometimes they're not seeing us 3-4 days, maybe. So it's certainly reminded me of the fact we're working with real live human beings, no matter what the market is. And communication is so important. And also before, someone could call and this person referred them and, okay, what are you looking for? And you get them to send their pre-approval letter and you meet at the property. I have been reminded it's very important to meet with people, especially in this market, and lay out the reality as well as we can. And just put all the information out there eye to eye, because it is so emotional for them. And it just seems to flow much better. So I think I'll hold on to a lot of this that I'm learning about people.
I think that's great. A technical change, I guess, for us that we'll certainly continue doing is virtual tours. I feel like that's been helpful of helping people eliminate the need to see properties that really just the floor plan doesn't work for them, helping them navigate that. And then definitely the emotional side of it, because I think that while we all know, like we tell ourselves, we're helping people accomplish the American dream of home ownership. And while as cliche as that sounds, it's real. And when we've been going through this for the last 2 years or 18 months of a pandemic, and then coming out of that and having the market be as crazy as it is, feelings, emotions, all the things are heightened and just extra, and everybody is a little extra excited or extra any feeling you've got. It's like one extreme to the other. But just stepping back and being patient and realizing that I do this every day, all day. They don't. This might be one of 5 times that they go through this process. And if they've gone through it before, it's totally different than it was then. And if this is their first time going through it, they have no idea what to expect. So like you said, setting those expectations for your customers, and then setting expectations for the other agents on the other side of how you do business. You know, I'm sure a lot of you have seen emails that come through after you get something under contract. That's like, all right, so this is the person in my office that's going to help me, or it's just a solo transaction. And here's all the different things that we're going to do. And here's how I like to communicate. How do you like to communicate? You know, we're doing the transaction with one another on the human level just as much as we are with our customers, and having some grace with one another in this crazy time has been also something that I have learned. We're not all doing the same things all the time. And our personal lives are not always in the same phases as they were maybe 18 months ago. Things have changed dramatically. So giving everybody a little bit of grace is something that I will take with me from this. Katie, are we ready to wrap up, or have you seen any more questions come through that we need to talk about?
There was a good one in here too from earlier about, can you speak to what you base your top contenders on in a multiple bid offer? And you guys kind of talked about what you're doing, like for, making your offers, but I think this is more about assessing how you decide, it's up to the buyer and seller, all that stuff, but like, how do you help, if you use that spreadsheet, for example, how do you help present that to the client?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, and on the spreadsheet that I send out, you'll see there's a red bar in the middle, and that's like, how much money do I get? We look at that one first. That's always more, the most important one. And then you kind of have to look at all the other stars. And again, when you get 15 offers, there's a good chance that 3 or 4 of them are pretty close to the same when it comes to the net in the end. So then you have to figure out the other terms. And, if I've set expectations on the front end and said my seller needs to close X and give possession X, I find the ones that have already agreed to do that on the front end without me having to go back and ask them, because also to all the attendees, make that information known on the front end. If that's something your seller is expecting or needing, go ahead and, tell the masses in the realtor remarks, this is what we're looking for. And you'll probably get it. And then after closing in possession, my next one is the lender, to make sure that, all right, all this is great and sounds wonderful, but can it actually happen? And so those would probably be my top 3. Monica, what about you?
Well, and is it a cash transaction, the type loan? If it is a cash transaction, I have seen it where we get a cash offer, and then when that inspection's done, and which is normal, but maybe it goes down 20,000. So I try to prepare that seller for that too. Yes, this is a good cash offer. However, this is what we could be looking at. So that's something that I include on that spreadsheet as well. How they're going to pay for the house, the lender, is it local lender? Is it contingent upon, what all is it contingent upon? Not just the appraisal, but is it dependent upon receipt of down payment assistance, or whoever they're receiving it from? Are they going to have funding? Are they almost close to out? I think that's our job, to find out as much of that as we can and have that for the seller.
And Marcia mentioned, at least when the 4 of us spoke in advance of this, and Monica talked about this earlier, but that to the seller, it's often just about the bottom line. We were talking about that in regard to love letters, but Marcia, can you share from your perspective as the seller, how you and your husband ranked those offers when Maureen presented them to you?
Okay, well, hopefully, can you hear me okay on my audio?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yes, well, basically, like I said, it was the bottom line was, we look at it as a business transaction. And the first offer was a very clean offer. And that was the one that was always just kind of standing out with us. So, I think we just made, the best decision.
So it's, for, like you said, Monica, for the seller, it's often just what's the bottom line and what's the cleanest, easiest, thing. So that's great. Thanks for that. And it looks like you got all the other questions, Amanda.
Okay, good. Well, then what we'll say is we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We'll be sending out a list of kind of some bullet points of just some best practices that were discussed here. I'll be happy to send the spreadsheet that Carol and I use when we are working with our sellers. And we just so appreciate everybody tuning in, and appreciate Katie for putting it together, and Cassandra Bell Warren for pushing. This was something that needed to happen. And this is an insane market, and agents need to be prepared so that we can prepare our customers and clients. Otherwise, it's going to be a rough few more months.
Yes.
Thank you all so much, everyone who attended. And I'm so sorry for all the crazy glitches in the beginning there, but we got through it. So thanks for your patience and grace, speaking to that. And huge thanks to Amanda, Monica, and especially Marcia, for being with us today and for sharing all of this good information in your big brains. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.